Some houses aren't abandoned, it's just that the people who used to live there never wanted to leave. The late afternoon in Giavine countryside was bathed in a soft golden hue. Peaceful like a still painting. The fading sunlight cast long shadows of two on the red dirt path, where wild grass poked through rough, twisted roots. Her suitcase rolled across the uneven ground with a creaking sound, like it was sighing. Tu returned to her hometown on an overcast afternoon, bringing with her a suitcase of clothes, a backpack with her laptop, and a handwritten letter from her late aunt. She was 26, single, and had lived in Saigon for over a decade. A freelance interior designer, enough to get by, but nothing extra. From a young age, Tu grew up in rented rooms or relatives' houses. Her parents divorced early, and she never really had a place she could call home. So when the old wooden house in her mother's village, the place her mother was born, was left to her, Tu felt the need to return, even if just for a short while. Not necessarily to live, but to see if there was anything in her memories that had been missing. She paused in front of the wooden gate, staring at the three-room house now covered in moss. A breeze blew from behind her, carrying a musty smell mixed with ash and smoke, a familiar scent she remembered from childhood. Whenever her grandmother lit the stove to burn leaves, Tu took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Am I really starting over in a place like this?" She pulled the key from her coat pocket, inserted it into the rusty iron lock. The wooden door creaked open slowly. The hinges didn't groan, they made a strange sound, like someone softly clearing their throat. Tu frowned. Old house. Strange noises are normal, she reassured herself, then stepped across the threshold. Inside, it was dim even though there was still daylight. The house wasn't large, 3 rooms, a small wooden attic above, and a detached kitchen in the back. The ceiling was low, and the lantern hooks had faded with time. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and lingering ash from the kitchen. Tu walked slowly, her hand brushing the doorframe. The wall was blotched with brown stains, likely from water damage. Beneath her feet, the wooden floor creaked with every step. She sat on the front step and wiped sweat from her forehead. She was tired, not from the long journey, but from mental exhaustion. A few minutes later, she took out her phone. No signal. She sighed and set it on the rotting wooden table near the window. "Maybe I can get some Wi-Fi at the market tomorrow." Her voice was barely a whisper, as if speaking to herself. She looked around, and her gaze stopped at the old wooden cabinet against the kitchen wall, the only piece of furniture still intact. Painted black, with hand-carved starburst patterns. Its interior was pitch dark. Tu stood up and walked over. She wasn't sure why she felt drawn to it. As her hand touched the cabinet door, her fingertips shivered from the dry, cold wood. Right then, a faint thump came from inside. Startled, she jumped back, her chest tightened, eyes locked on the wooden door. Silence. Just a mouse, she thought. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. "I'm just tired, imagining things." A mouse or a lizard could make sounds like that. Tu turned away, but the heavy feeling clung to her. She decided to step outside and stand in the sunlight to clear her head. On the porch, the evening light was fading. The shadow of the old starfruit tree cast on the house wall looked like a giant hand, stretching and folding with each breeze. Tu stood still, arms crossed, eyes toward the pond behind the house. An old man approached from afar, leaning on a cane, wearing a brown shirt and a straw hat. Tu brightened and called out, "Hello, sir, I'm Tu. I just moved back here." The old man stopped at the gate. His cloudy eyes squinted as he stared at her. "You're Mr. Din's granddaughter, right? No one's lived in that house for a long time." Tu nodded, stepping closer. "Yes, I'm Tu, his granddaughter. My parents passed away long ago. I'm just here to stay temporarily. I'm lucky the house is still intact." The old man gave a slight nod. Then his tone lowered. "People say, that house is cold. Not everyone can get used to it." Tu smiled, but her heart sank a little. She kept her voice light. "If it's cold, I'll just wear an extra layer." The old man said nothing more, bowed slightly, and quietly walked away. His figure disappeared behind the banana trees, his stooped back moving like a silent shadow. That night, Tu laid out a mat in the middle room, turned on a small light, and lay down. She took out her laptop to journal but realized she couldn't connect to the neighbor's Wi-Fi. Her phone and computer were now just decorative. The yellow light cast shadows on the wall. The starfruit tree outside created hand-like shapes clutching at the house. She pulled the blanket up to her chin. Alone in the old house. In a quiet countryside, it felt nothing like what she'd imagined. Tu turned over and closed her eyes. Rustle. A faint sound came from the kitchen. Her eyes snapped open. Rustle, rustle? It sounded like something heavy being dragged across the tiles or scraping against wood. She sat up, turned on the flashlight on her phone, and walked straight to the kitchen. Nothing. The cabinet was still there. But this time, the left door was slightly ajar, just a sliver. She was sure she had closed it the night before. Tu approached, held her breath, and gently pushed the door open. Empty. Only a faint burnt smell lingered, like scorched hair. She coughed and stepped back. But when she looked again, the smell was gone. She returned to her room, locked the door, turned off the light. Night fell fast, as if someone had dropped a black curtain over the whole house. Around 2 a.m., in her restless sleep, she heard a soft click, like the cabinet latch being opened. Then a knock. Thud, thud. Still from the kitchen. Tu didn't dare check. She stayed still, clutching the blanket, eyes wide open staring at the ceiling. Suddenly, from the head of the bed, a faint whisper echoed, a woman's voice. Clear and soft. Don't open the cabinet? Tu didn't remember when she dozed off. Morning light crept through the door, making her squint. Her body ached all over, like she hadn't slept a minute. She sat up, pressing both hands on the bed. Her neck felt cold, not from the weather, but as if a hand had rested there all night. She muttered, "I'm really haunted." Tu stepped outside. The sky was clear, clouds drifting lazily, as if the terrifying night had never happened. She took a deep breath, then grabbed a broom to sweep the yard, forcing herself to return to reality. Passing the kitchen, she stopped, glancing at the cabinet, still in the same place. Tightly shut, eerily silent. She furrowed her brow, then quickly turned away. No more thinking. It's just my imagination. Around 9 a.m., Tu decided to go to the town market. She needed basic supplies to live simply for a few months. After all, this was a temporary retreat after a painful breakup and a job that had drained her completely. The walk to the market was nearly 2 kilometers. Along rice paddies in full bloom, under the mild sun, she observed the scenery, houses peeking through bamboo groves, roosters crowing, children playing, the smell of cooking fires in the breeze, all of it softened her heart. At the market, she bought vegetables, drinks, and a new mosquito net. While paying, an old woman selling greens stared intently at her. Her face was wrinkled, but her eyes were sharp. She spoke softly. "You Mr. Din's granddaughter?" Tu smiled. "Yes, I'm Tu. I'm staying at my grandfather's old house for a while." The old woman paused her packing, sighed. "People say, that house has a chill. Living there alone, be careful, alright?" Tu kept her tone light. "Yes, I understand. Old houses tend to be damp. That's all." The woman said nothing more, just slid the bag of vegetables over, eyes still watching her curiously. That afternoon, Tu sat on the porch, sipping water and opening her laptop. She was a freelance editor, sometimes a screenwriter. She'd taken a break for weeks, but today wanted to write a few lines to lift her spirits. She typed a few words, then looked up. The sunset poured across the yard. The old starfruit tree rustled just like yesterday. From the kitchen came a faint click. Tu jumped up and rushed in. The cabinet was still there, but this time, the left door was ajar, just a crack. She was sure she had closed it last night. Tu walked over, held her breath, and pushed the door wide open. Empty. Apart from a thin layer of dust, there was nothing inside, but under the golden light of dusk, Tu saw a small line of writing, as if traced by a fingertip through the dust coating the bottom of the cabinet. The letters were shaky, slanted. "Don't say its name." Tu's breathing quickened. She slammed the cabinet doors shut. This time, she clearly heard it, a faint ticking sound coming from within. Like a clock ticking, even though she had never put any clock inside. That night, Tu didn't dare sleep early. She turned on every light in the house's 3 rooms and sat hugging her knees, reading a book. Around 1 a.m., the power flickered. The lights blinked a few times, then went out completely. Tu grabbed her flashlight and aimed it toward the power outlet. Nothing seemed unusual. She was about to head back when she heard the same rustling as before, only clearer this time. And longer, as if someone were running their hand across the wooden surface. Tu froze, heart pounding. Then, a whisper, very close, right next to her ear. "Don't open it again?" She spun around. No one there, but she felt a cold breath brush the back of her neck. The next day, Tu told her story to a nearby elderly woman, Grandma Nyan, who used to know Tu's grandfather. They sat on the porch, sipping hot tea. Grandma Nyan nodded as she listened, then quietly stared into the distance. "That cabinet, it used to belong to your grandmother. She died in that kitchen. People say, when she took her last breath, her hand was still on the cabinet door." Tu was startled. "Why, Grandma? What happened?" The old woman sighed and poured more tea. "It was a bitter winter that year. The stove wouldn't light. She went to the cabinet looking for old charcoal, then had a seizure and passed away. Since then, no one has dared touch that cabinet." Tu bowed her head. Wind from the front yard blew in, rattling the window shutters. Grandma Nyan continued, her voice lower. "Ever since then, whenever someone tries to take the cabinet apart to burn it, that night, they'll hear voices, like someone standing in the dark, whispering, one word at a time." Tu shivered, quickly stood up to thank her, and left. The third night, it rained, the first storm of the season. Tu lay under the blanket, wrapped tightly, eyes wide open, staring at the roof. The rain pounded on the tin roof, mixed with the dripping sounds from the kitchen. Suddenly, through the rain, a cold voice rang out, clear, as if coming from directly beneath the floor. "I am still here." Tu shot upright in the dark. She couldn't even scream. Her heart pounded, throat dry. That voice, there was no way it was just the wind or water. "I am still here." Each word, clear and deliberate. She gasped for air, clutching the blanket tightly. Then, summoning all her courage, Tu turned on her flashlight and scanned the room. Nothing, just the trembling beam of light from her shaking hands. The rain continued, but now accompanied by creaking sounds from the wooden attic above. Tu glanced toward the loft, the one place she hadn't dared go since arriving. The old attic had rotting floorboards. No railing, only a slanted wooden ladder with sparse rungs. Every time she looked up, she felt like something was lying up there, watching her through the gaps in the boards. She swallowed hard and whispered to herself, "I can't be weak. I live alone, and if I'm scared, who else will I rely on?" But her throat tightened. She looked toward the kitchen. It was pitch black. The flashlight beam couldn't reach the corner where the cabinet stood. Tu stepped back into her room, locked the door, dragged a chair against it, and sat down hugging her knees. In her mind, that voice still echoed, "I am still here." The next morning, the rain hadn't stopped. The sky was gloomy, the wind bitter cold, as if the night fog from decades ago still lingered. Tu woke up late, eyes puffy from sleeplessness. When she stepped outside to wash her face, the rainwater dripping from the roof chilled her awake a little, but her chest still felt heavy, as if a rock were lodged in her heart. She set a small chair on the porch and sat hugging her knees, staring toward the kitchen. That black cabinet, ever since she opened it, everything had become strange. She pulled out her phone, thinking for the first time to call her best friend, Twee, and tell her everything. But when she turned it on, the screen read, "No service." She muttered under her breath. Probably lost signal because of the rain. She was about to turn the phone off when, suddenly, it vibrated. An incoming call, but the number was strange. All zeros. Oh. Without thinking, she picked up, her hand trembling. Hello? There was no voice, just the sound of breathing. Heavy, rapid, like someone was right up against the receiver. Tu shivered, about to hang up, when a woman's voice whispered coldly, "You are sleeping above me?" The phone immediately lost signal and shut off. Tu stood frozen. This was no coincidence anymore. That afternoon, she told Grandma Nyan everything. The old woman's face turned serious, her cloudy eyes now sharp like blades. She asked softly, "Have you gone up to that attic?" Tu shook her head, replying quietly, "No, I've avoided it, but last night, I heard a voice. It clearly came from up there." Grandma Nyan held her hand, her voice deep and steady. "There was someone who hanged herself up there once. "A girl, your grandmother's illegitimate daughter. They kept it secret, but I knew. Someone saw a white figure swaying from the roof that day." Tu's eyes widened. Her throat tightened. "Hanged herself? Right above where I sleep." Grandma Nyan nodded gently, then pulled an old yellowed paper from her pocket. On it, a talisman drawn in smeared red ink. "Take this, paste it by the attic stairs. It won't get rid of anything, but at least it might keep her from coming down again." Tu accepted it, her hands trembling. That afternoon, the gloomy sky stretched on as if sunlight had never existed. Tu brought the talisman back and stuck it right onto the attic's wooden beam. As she pressed it on, a faint hissing sound came from the roof above, not clear whether it was the wind, or something that resented her for doing it. That night, she turned on all the lights and wore headphones to drown out the wind. But by midnight, when everything sank into silence, Tu had to take the headphones off because the room was suddenly filled with a burnt, acrid smell. Burnt hair. She shot up, flashlight in hand, scanning around her bed. On the floor, by the edge of the wooden plank, lay a long lock of hair, scorched at the ends. Tu gasped. No way. She clutched her head, pulled out her phone, and tried to turn it on. This time, only a single blurred message appeared on the screen. "The attic is not for the living." At dawn, Tu packed up her belongings. Determined to leave, she really didn't want to spend even one more night in that house. As she rolled her suitcase out to the yard, she looked back at the house one last time. Everything still seemed calm, peaceful, nothing out of place. She turned to go, but just then, from inside the house, a woman's voice called out, not crying, not yelling, but a whisper, gentle like a lullaby. "Stay, I'm starting to miss you." Tu whipped around. The front door slammed shut. The heavy wooden door closed behind her with a deep, hollow thud, like the sound of earth falling into a grave. Tu stood frozen in the yard, her hand gripping the suitcase handle tightly. The wind blew hard from behind, but all she could hear was the echo of that whisper. "Stay, I'm starting to miss you." She turned to look at the house. Morning sunlight shone through the starfruit leaves, casting light onto the moss-covered roof. It looked like a serene countryside painting. But inside, she knew it was waiting. Tu gasped and pulled out her phone to call a taxi. Still no signal. She bit her lip, then slowly backed away, dragging her suitcase to the gate. But just as her hand touched the latch, a faint thud sounded behind her, like something had fallen from a height onto the wooden floor. Tu turned. The kitchen door was ajar. She hadn't opened it. She was certain everything had been shut tight before she left. Her heart pounded like it would explode. But her hand, for some reason, let go of the suitcase and turned back. Tu walked into the house. Slowly, like a sleepwalker, her footsteps echoed evenly on the wooden floor. She passed the middle room and turned right, heading straight to the kitchen. The wooden cabinet still stood silently in its place. But beneath it, a small wooden panel had come loose. That was the sound she'd heard earlier. Tu crouched down and shined her flashlight into the gap beneath the cabinet. Something was reflecting light, something metallic, or glass? She reached in and pulled it out. A round mirror, about the size of her palm, with a brass frame now tinged green with rust. She examined it under the flashlight. Though old, the mirror's surface was clean, no dust, no scratches, unnaturally clear. As she lifted it to eye level, she froze. In the mirror, behind her, there was nothing. But she could feel it, someone standing right behind her, breathing. Tu spun around. Nothing. The kitchen was empty. She looked back at the mirror. This time, she saw a strand of long hair hanging down from above, as if someone were sitting on top of the cabinet, peeking over. She screamed and hurled the mirror to the ground. It didn't break. It rolled once, then stopped, facing up. In the mirror now was the attic space above, the one she had never looked directly at during the day. And in the mirror, in that corner, was a crouching figure, face turned to the wall, long hair covering the back. Tu backed away, her hand hitting the edge of the kitchen table. She scrambled for her phone, opened the camera, and pointed it toward the attic. Nothing there. But when she looked again at the mirror on the ground, the figure was still sitting there. She whispered in a trembling breath, "Please, don't hurt me." The figure in the mirror tilted its head. That afternoon, Tu called on Uncle Tin, a distant neighbor who once helped clean the house, to come check the attic. She didn't dare explain the real reason, only said she feared termites might collapse the ceiling. Uncle Tin came, wearing a hat, carrying a flashlight and a small stick. As he climbed the attic ladder, he joked, "I've lived in this village 50 years and never seen a ghost. If they exist, maybe they're just waiting for someone who believes." Tu stood below, holding her breath. A few minutes later, Uncle Tin climbed back down, his face looking slightly off. Tu asked immediately, "Did you see anything?" He scratched his head. "Nothing strange really, just, there were soot marks up there. Like someone had lit a fire or burned something." Tu squinted. "Burned something? In the attic?" Uncle Tin shook his head. "I don't know, but next to the ashes, there was a comb and some burnt hair." That night, the weather turned unusually hot. Tu lay sweating despite the open window. The air felt thick, as if something invisible was pressing down on her. Around 1 a.m., she heard water dripping behind her. Not rain, it sounded like wet hair dripping. Tu opened her eyes. Right next to her bed, in the dim glow of the nightlight, was the round mirror she had thrown away that morning, now lying quietly by her feet. And in the mirror, this time, she saw the woman's face, clear as day. A woman's face, pale, eyes black, mouth unmoving but whispering endlessly. Tu froze, unable to make a sound. Then suddenly, in the mirror, the woman turned her face fully toward her, hollow eyes staring straight into hers. A whisper drifted out, "You will sit up there, too?" Tu screamed, hurling the mirror again. This time, the mirror cracked down the middle. A deep diagonal split. The smell of burnt hair once again filled the room. The broken mirror lay silently on the wooden floor. A crack ran diagonally from one corner to the other, as if it had sliced the world in two. Tu stood frozen, the acrid smell of burnt hair rushing into her nose, making her gag. She coughed, stumbled backward. Her trembling hand reached for her phone, but the screen was black. She powered it back on, and the same line appeared. "The attic is not for the living," she whispered, barely audible, as if pleading. "Please, let me go." Outside the window, a long, piercing screech echoed, like fingernails dragging across a sheet of metal. Slow, drawn out, chilling. Tu grabbed the bamboo stick propped in the corner of the room and backed toward the door. Her hand gripped the latch, ready to fling it open and run. But, from behind, a whisper came right next to her ear. "You'll leave, but you'll come back." Tu spun around. Nothing there. Only the dim yellow light cast from the flashlight she dropped on the floor. The next morning, Tu didn't dare sleep in. At the break of dawn, she cleaned up the mirror shards, wrapped them carefully in cloth, and buried them behind the house, right under the starfruit tree. When she dug into the soil, it was strangely dry. No worms, no usual damp scent, only a faint burnt smell, eerily like ashes. Tu murmured, "It's just an old mirror, just an old object." But her hands still trembled as she covered the hole. That afternoon, Tu decided to visit the village's old cemetery, where her grandparents were buried. She needed answers, some thread to connect everything, some sign. The cemetery lay at the end of a red dirt road, nearly a kilometer from her house, past a row of bamboo and a patch of wild graves overgrown with weeds. The air was gloomy, but not suffocating. Tu found her grandfather's grave, Mr. Din, easily, since it was built with bricks and had a stone marker. Beside it was her grandmother's grave, Tran Thi Duong. The inscription read, "Died on the 12th day of the last lunar month, 1994. Tu murmured. It was winter, the night she died in the kitchen. She looked around. The wind rustled through the grass. No one else was there, but a sense of unease lingered in her chest. As she turned to leave, her eyes caught a smaller grave. Slightly off to the left, no stone marker, just a wooden stake with a decayed paper plaque. She knelt down and pulled the weeds aside. The letters were faded, but still legible. Tran Thi Nhan, died 1992. She whispered, "Tran Thi Nhan? That's not my grandmother." That name, she'd never heard her parents mention it. She looked back toward her grandmother's grave and muttered, 1992, 2 years before Grandma. Who was she? Why no headstone? Why so close? That evening, Tu went to visit Grandma Nhan and told her what she'd seen at the cemetery. The old woman listened silently for a long time, then gave a faint nod. Tran Thi Nhan was the youngest daughter of Mr. Din, different mother than your father. Your grandmother became the official wife later. Tu was stunned. So, she and Grandma lived in the same house? Grandma Nyan nodded. Yes, but they didn't get along. The girl, Nyan, was odd, quiet, often sat alone in the attic. One time, someone saw her sitting up there for 2 full nights, never coming down to eat. By the 3rd day, Tu held her breath. Then, what happened? Grandma? The old woman gripped the hem of her shirt, her voice dropping. She died, hanged herself while everyone was away at a family gathering. Her eyes were wide open, they couldn't be closed. Some said when they brought her down, her neck was still tilted to the side, like she hadn't stopped watching the living. Tu let go of her teacup. Her breath caught in her throat. The old woman looked at her intently. The cabinet was hers. She used to sit beside it, looking in the mirror, brushing her hair for hours. Whenever someone came near, she'd hide the mirror inside. It all clicked. The mirror, the whispers, the attic, the smell of burning hair. That night, Tu decided not to lock her bedroom door. She placed the bamboo stick beside her bed, the small lamp right at the edge of the floor, casting warm yellow light across the blotchy wall. Around 1 a.m., as if by habit, Tu opened her eyes. She didn't know why, but she knew someone was sitting at the foot of her bed. She didn't scream, didn't move. She just breathed slowly, eyes fixed on the dark. And then, a soft voice rose. Her own voice, echoing as if from the attic above. I'm still right here. Tu turned her head to the left. In the wall mirror, there were 2 figures sitting on the bed. One was her. The other looked exactly like her, but with longer hair, face tilted to the left, and eyes with no pupils. Tu sat frozen, her eyes locked on the mirror hanging on the wall. In it, she and the other silently sat side by side. But only one of them was truly alive. That face, with long hair draping over pale shoulders, skin as white as ash. She tilted her head, her black eyes absorbing no light, yet staring at Tu as if she had been waiting for a very long time. Then that soft voice echoed, this time, not from outside her ear or within the mirror, but inside Tu's own mind. Now that you know, you have to sleep with me. Tu jumped to her feet. The mirror crashed to the ground with a loud, jarring clatter, but it didn't break. She backed against the wall, stammering, I didn't mean to invade. I don't want to stay here anymore. No one replied, but from the ceiling, a long trail of water began to drip, just like someone had just washed their hair with cold water. Each drop fell evenly, splashing on the floor and spreading like blood. The next morning, Tu woke up beside a broken bamboo stick. She couldn't remember when she had fallen asleep, only that when she opened her eyes, it was morning, yet the room still seemed shrouded in a hazy veil. Everything was muted and cold. She stepped outside without greeting anyone, without eating, without her phone. She headed straight to Grandma Nyan's house. The old woman saw her coming and gave a slow, knowing nod. It showed you its face, didn't it? Tu nodded faintly. Her voice was dry, low. I saw myself, but it wasn't me. It was a soulless copy. Who is she? Grandma? Is she human, or something else? Grandma Nyan slowly poured tea, eyes gazing out at the yard. It's Nyan, but she hasn't been human for a long time. After she hanged herself, her body wasn't found for days. Back then, the attic was lower. People had to use a ladder to cut the rope. But the strange thing, her face didn't rot. Her eyes were wide open, lips moving, like she still wanted to speak. Tu whispered, as if she were still alive. The old woman nodded, handing her a cup of tea. People say she trapped her soul inside that mirror. Since then, anyone who sleeps in the room beneath the attic, over time, starts dreaming of sitting there, brushing their hair in front of the mirror. At first, it's just in dreams, but one day, they actually find themselves sitting there all night, not knowing if they're asleep or awake. Tu shuddered. She remembered, last night, she hadn't dreamed of anything, but when she woke, she was still holding an old wooden comb. She asked quietly, is there any way to make her let go of me? Grandma didn't answer right away. She pulled a yellowed photo from her pocket. The photo showed a girl, about 18, sitting sideways beside the kitchen cabinet, holding a comb, face bent toward the mirror. Tu recognized her, the same face from the mirror last night. Grandma pushed the photo toward her. If you want to cut the thread, you must do the one thing she never got to do while alive. Tu frowned. "What is it, Grandma?" The old woman looked at her for a long moment, then said slowly, "You must look at your reflection in the cracked mirror. But don't close your eyes. And you must let her enter your heart. Then leave on her own." Tu was silent. Grandma warned, "If you shut your eyes or turn away, she'll never leave." That evening, the sky turned gray with clouds. Tu returned to the house, bringing the photo, a candle, and the cracked mirror she had dug back up from under the starfruit tree. She placed the mirror on the table, lit the candle, and sat down, right where Nyan once sat. Beside the kitchen cabinet, Tu looked straight into the mirror. The crack split her face in two, one side lit, the other in shadow. Wind rushed through the yard, shaking the door. In the flickering candlelight, her reflection smiled faintly. Tu didn't look away. Suddenly, the image in the mirror moved differently than her own. She sat still. But the reflection raised a hand to touch her cheek, then slowly stroked her hair. Tu gripped the arms of the chair tightly. A sharp pain bloomed in her chest. She felt as if someone was stepping inside her, not with feet, but with memories. A strange life rushed in. She saw herself as a young girl, living deep in silence, sitting alone in the kitchen every day, brushing her hair, waiting for someone to call her name. But no one did. No one remembered. And she died, quietly, like an old shadow in an old house. Tu choked up, tears spilling out. She didn't know if they were hers or Nyan's. Then the voice spoke again in her head. "Now you know who I am." Tu gave a faint nod. A gentle breeze brushed her face. The candle blew out. In the mirror, for the first time, only Tu remained. Tu sat quietly in front of the mirror. The candle had long gone out, yet the room remained bathed in soft golden light, as if it had never needed fire to glow. In the mirror's reflection, only her face remained, weary, hollow, and calm. The wind still rustled outside. Rain began to fall. Each drop tapping on the mossy tile roof sounded like someone knocking on the past. The rain didn't pour, but lingered, cold and sharp. Tu stood, wiped the sweat and tears from her face, and walked to the window. Through the fogged glass, she watched the branches of the starfruit tree sway, brushing lightly across the roof. The scent of damp earth and old ashes drifted in the breeze. From the attic above, a faint rustle sounded. No longer afraid, Tu stepped into the middle of the house and looked up toward the loft. Her voice lowered, as if calling inward. "If you're still there, I'm coming up, not to banish you, but to understand." No reply came. Tu stepped forward, placing her hand on the first rung of the ladder. The wood creaked under her weight, but she didn't stop. With each step, the wind blew harder through the rafters, carrying hundreds of whispered voices through her hair. At the top, she stood still for a long time. The attic was small, dark, and worn. The floorboards were warped and moldy, but there was no sign of life, nor any smell of death. She knelt, placing her hand on the floor. Cold. Beside her, a round scorch mark remained, where a candle might have sat for years. Tu whispered, "Sister Nyan, if you were ever that lonely, I'm sorry I called your name too late." The wind suddenly stopped, and from somewhere, a tiny voice spoke, soft as mist. "You hear me now?" Tu turned. No one there, but inside, she knew someone had just smiled. That night, rain fell through the dark. Tu didn't lock her door. She didn't wear headphones. She left the light dim and sat beneath the cabinet, facing the cracked mirror. And she spoke, told everything about her life, her parents' divorce, a childhood without a hometown, smoggy days in Saigon, sleepless nights in cramped apartments, and the reason she came back to this old house. The mirror didn't show anything unusual, but Tu could feel someone was listening for a very long time. Midway through her story, her voice trembled. "I thought I was strong, but I'm just like you. Aren't I? Sometimes I sit alone, not knowing what to do, except brush my hair, drink cold water, and think about someone who's forgotten me." From the corner of the room, wind drifted in. The candle suddenly lit by itself. No one touched it. Tu smiled faintly, eyes still fixed on the mirror. "If you want, I'll stay here a little longer. But on one condition." The wind calmed. The candle stood still. Tu whispered, "Don't stay in the mirror anymore, come down. Sit next to me." The corner of the mirror suddenly fogged over. And when the mist cleared, only Tu remained, but her eyes were deeper, sadder, as if carrying two souls. The next morning, it was still raining, but gently. Tu woke feeling weightless. She stepped out onto the porch, sipping hot tea, notebook in hand. Inside, she wrote a few lines. Last night she came down. Didn't say a word, just sat there, and I didn't ask anything more. That was enough. She's not in the mirror anymore. She closed the notebook and tucked it into a desk drawer. Behind her, rain tapped gently on the attic roof. Not eerie, just quiet, like someone who had waited too long and finally had someone to sit beside them. That afternoon, after the calmest morning since she moved in, Tu cracked open the kitchen window. Soft rays of rare sunlight slipped through the leaves, painting speckled shadows on the yellowed tiles. She sat beside the old cabinet, turning over each item inside. Everything remained: chipped porcelain bowls, a dented aluminum teapot, a few dusty glass bottles, and a faded red cloth. Tu exhaled lightly, hand gently touching the baseboard of the cabinet, where she had once discovered the mirror. The wooden panel still bore a small crack, like a gap between two unfinished lifetimes. She reached to pry it loose, and this time, it gave way. Beneath the panel was a hollow compartment, deep and dark. Inside lay a notebook, wrapped in a moldy, time-worn cloth pouch. Tu pulled it out, her heart pounding. She sat cross-legged in the middle of the kitchen and opened it. The handwriting was slanted, shaky, very small, but filled with emotion. On the first page, the top line read, "Nyan, 15 years old, written in the dark because no one listens." Tu swallowed and kept reading. "Today Grandma kicked me out of the dinner table again. She said I wasn't part of her family." Grandpa stayed silent. He wouldn't look at me. Aunt Duong turned away. "They called me the girl who just happens to live here." She flipped to the next page. The writing was heavier, more broken. "I feel like that cabinet. Right in the kitchen, next to everyone. But nobody needs it. No one opens it. They just let the dust settle. Let termites eat away." At the last page, there was only a single line, written with such pressure it nearly tore the paper. "If I can't live here, I'll stay in another way." Tu closed the notebook, her hand clutching the fabric of her shirt. She whispered, her throat tight, "You weren't just forgotten, you were erased?" She looked toward the cabinet. In the fading light, the wood seemed to breathe, an old, weary sigh, as if waiting for someone to finally say its true name. That night, Tu didn't sleep. She relit the old candle, placed it beside the cabinet, and opened Nyan's notebook to the very last page. Laying it on the table, she slowly read each word aloud, like a prayer. "If I can't live here, I'll stay in another way." Then Tu bowed her head and gently said, "But now I know you did live here. And you lived long enough to deserve being remembered." The candle flickered. Outside, the wind suddenly stopped. From the attic above, a soft moan echoed downward, long and thin, not from any clear source, but as light as a breath of relief after long pain. Tu sat up straight, eyes on the ceiling. Then she walked to the cabinet and, for the first time, opened both doors wide. Inside were still the old dishes. But in the bottom corner, a strange object appeared, a white cloth rope, coiled like a small noose, folded neatly, completely free of dust. Tu didn't touch it. She sat down, looked straight into the cabinet's depths, and softly said, "You don't have to keep this anymore. No one is tying you here now." The air in the kitchen shifted. The rope trembled slightly, then slid back into the far panel, vanishing as if it had never existed. The next morning, Tu sat again in the yard. Beneath the starfruit tree, soft sunlight warmed her hair, making her look a few years older, but also much more at peace. Grandma Nyan came over, carrying a bundle of rice cakes. As she sat down, she said, "Last night, your house was completely quiet." Tu nodded, smiling faintly, "Because I read what needed to be read. And she heard me." The old woman was silent for a while, then poured tea, her eyes thoughtful. "Not everyone who dies unjustly seeks revenge. Some just need to be heard," Tu whispered, "or just need a place to quietly remain." Wind passed over the roof, carrying the sound of dry leaves rustling. From the kitchen, the cabinet sat still, no longer frightening. It was just like an old person, quiet, because there was no more blame to give. That evening, Tu stayed home alone. Grandma Nyan had gone. The sun was setting, casting shadows of starfruit leaves onto the kitchen floor. Tu sat organizing notebooks, utensils, rearranging the cabinet that once held the hidden journal. As her hand reached into the back, trying to grab an old ladle, a small piece of paper fell out. It wasn't Nyan's. The handwriting was completely different, a man's hand, rough, shaky, as if scribbled hastily on the ground. Tu froze, reading the lines, her voice trembling. I was the last to see Nyan alive. She didn't hang herself. She was pulled up. The back door was open that night. I heard footsteps, but when I ran out, only the rope was left, and a shadow in the rain. Tu clenched the note, heart aching like someone had flicked her chest with force. She didn't die by her own hand. She collapsed onto the kitchen floor. A cold draft rose from the ground, even though the sun was still shining through. Tu mumbled. Then, who else was in this house? That night, Tu didn't dare sleep. She placed the cracked mirror on the table, lit a candle like always. But this time, in the mirror's reflection, Nyan no longer appeared, only herself, still and empty. Around 2 a.m., from the back of the house, the sound of the rear door creaking open echoed through the dark. Tu jolted upright. She knew for certain she had latched the back door earlier that evening, even tied it with a piece of string. The wind slipped through the crack in the door, but it wasn't ordinary wind. It dragged a breath with it, long and cold, like someone was standing at the threshold, exhaling at her neck without taking a step inside. Tu clenched the base of the candle and slowly walked toward the kitchen. In the darkness, the candlelight reflected off the mirror, casting a slanting glow toward the door. And there were footprints. Wet, muddy prints, each step clear from the back door leading all the way to the kitchen cabinet. The next morning, Tu called Grandma Nyan over. She handed her the note, her voice calm but heavy. Grandma, do you know who was the last to see Sister Nyan? The old woman looked at the paper for a long time. Her aged, cloudy eyes glinted with a trace of worry. Then she sighed. The person who wrote this was probably old Tu the cook. He kept the house back then. Lived in the rear, near the side annex. He manned the stove, watched the cabinet, tended the fire every night. Tu asked, "Is he still alive?" Grandma shook her head. Died in 95. Died right at the back door. Tu stared in shock. This house's back door? She nodded gently. Yes. That morning, they found him face down at the threshold, still clutching a rope. No one understood why. Tu swallowed hard, fingers gripping the hem of her dress. So, maybe Nyan didn't die of sorrow. Maybe she was pulled. Grandma Nyan didn't answer, but her expression darkened, like someone who had known that truth for a long time. That night, Tu left the lights off. She sat alone in the kitchen. The candle had burned out. The back door remained shut, but in her heart, she knew it was waiting to open. She whispered into the silence. If someone stood there the night Nyan died, then I need to know who you are. The wooden floor creaked behind her. Tu didn't turn around. She heard footsteps crossing the kitchen floor, slow and deliberate, then stopping behind the cabinet. Then, a man's raspy voice whispered, "I didn't want to. I didn't mean to." Tu whipped around. No one, but in the cracked mirror. It reflected clearly. An elderly man with gray hair, wearing a blue work shirt, standing by the cabinet, eyes lowered, still holding a rope. Tu sat frozen, gripping the edge of the wooden table, her eyes fixed on the old mirror. In it, the man in the faded blue shirt, disheveled hair, sun-worn face, stood silently behind the cabinet. He didn't move, didn't speak, but his hand still gripped the rope. Tu whispered, "You're Tu the cook?" The figure in the mirror gave a slight nod. No sound, no words, just a slow, heavy bow, like an apology years in the making. Tu asked, voice thick with emotion, "Did you see her, in the end?" The figure was still for a moment, then slowly lowered his head. His voice, hoarse and broken, sounded like it had cracked open from a throat held tight for too many years. "I couldn't stop it. I heard her crying behind the kitchen. But I was afraid. I thought she was just being difficult again." Tu shivered. "And then what?" He answered slowly. "By the time I ran up, she was already hanging. But her eyes were still open. She didn't die right away." His voice faltered, lost in the wind. "I saw the rope slip, and the shadow behind, pulling her up again." Tu repeated, barely breathing. "The shadow behind?" He nodded. "It wasn't me. Wasn't anyone in the house. It was something that stepped out from the cabinet. I never told anyone. I hid the rope in the wall. But a few months later, I started hearing her call. Two gripped the edge of the chair, voice rising. You let everyone believe Nyan took her own life? His voice broke. I was a coward. But that thing behind the cabinet, it wasn't human. I don't know what it was. Two stood up. The wind outside suddenly surged, shaking the wooden door. The cabinet let out a faint moan, like an old person turning after a long fever dream. Two stepped forward. Without hesitation, she opened both cabinet doors wide. Inside, empty. No dishes. No mirror. No journal. Only a blackened wall. Damp and streaked, as if a fire had burned there for years. Smoldering in secret. Two whispered, if someone is behind that, I'm not afraid anymore. I won't run like the others. A cold gust blew from the cabinet. The dark patch of wall quivered like the surface of water. And then, for a brief second, a small figure, hunched back, bald head, shoulders draped in a cook's robe, stepped out of the black wall. Passed right by Two, light as smoke, and vanished into the backyard. Two didn't turn around. She knew he had finally been released. 3 days later, Two left the old house. She left everything in place. No cleaning, no repainting. She only wiped down the cabinet, locked the attic, and gently placed the small journal back in the wooden compartment. On the table, she left a handwritten note. Only a few lines. This house was once lived in, and someone chose to stay. But now, they no longer need the cabinet. Two closed the door and stepped past the back threshold, where muddy footprints had once trailed, now only crossed by a soft band of morning sunlight across damp earth. The early wind swept over the roof, carrying the faint scent of kitchen smoke, as if someone had just boiled water and now stood quietly by the door. Gazing out at the garden,